Och, and the first speaker to continue is Rowlands Kaotcha, who is the country manager for the Hunger Project in Malawi. And he has worked for the Hunger Project in Malawi since 2001. He became a country manager 2004. He's educated in agriculture and at the Malawi University, and he has an MBA from the Eastern and Southern African Institute of Management in Tanzania. So very, very welcome, Rowlands Kaotcha.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. I'm Rowlands Kaotcha, and I'm the country director in Malawi. I'm the country director of the Hunger Project in Malawi. So Malawi is one of the countries in the southeastern part of Africa, and it's in the group of the least developed countries. And just as a background, and in that country, about 85% of the population, which is about 14 million people, lives in the rural area. And the general picture of the rural setup is that about 40% of that proportion of people is not able to spend more than $1 per day, meaning that about 40% lives at less than $1. It's an improvement. It was at 52%, so it has moved up to 40%. And about 1,120 women die out of 100,000, die during pregnancy. And that a lot of people are in the group of the hungry. So they run out of food in between harvesting seasons. And so that's the environment that I'll be talking about. And then, so the question is, in such a setup of people, or in such a setup of a community of people, is it possible to empower such a setup or group of people to end hunger and poverty? Because that's the mission of the Hunger Project. That's the mission of the institution I'm working in, to empower the poor and the hungry to end their own hunger and poverty. So here is a community which looks powerless and desperate, in need of handouts. And so the Hunger Project is saying, no, 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 no. We don't look at such a community as a powerless community in need of handout. We look at such a community as a group of people awaiting to be empowered and enlisted so that they can drive their own change process. So that's the way the Hunger Project looks at the poor and the hungry person. We believe that the poor person is actually the first primary resource that we need for the end of hunger and poverty. Without the primary resource there, we cannot end hunger and poverty. And we are not going to end the hunger. The community themselves are going to end hunger if we empower them. And so that's the work that we do there. And we have a toolkit, which we call VCA2, which we use to end hunger and poverty. Now, how do we do it? Because I'm sure the quickest and first way, yes, next one, thank you. The quickest and easiest way is to say, you are poor, you are hungry, we've come to check your situation. You need help, and we have come here to give you help. We have come here to give you food. Free food, and it has been like that in most communities. I was born in a village, and in my own village, that's how it has been. And the question I have now is, if that's the right way of doing things, why is the situation not changing until now? Perhaps something is not being done rightly somewhere. So that's, the Hunger Project has discovered this too. We call it the Epicenter Strategy. And within the Epicenter Strategy, we have a tool which we use in the commencement of the work. As we do the work, we call it VCA workshop. It has got 5 steps. And these 5 steps, the first one is called change of mindset. The first time we go into a community, we ask them a question. Do you believe hunger and poverty can end? They'll look at the car. The car is actually written, the Hunger Project. And they'll tell you to say, no, hunger and poverty cannot end. And you say, why do you believe so? They say, that's how things have been. I was born in such a situation. My granny, the grand of my granny was poor and all that. So this is how it shall be. So you are dealing with a group of people who have resigned from the belief that it is possible to change their own situation. So even if you come in a project in such an environment, that project will not be sustainable. That project will achieve a short term of change. That project will not be able to do the results that will remain in the community because the community itself has not believed in the change process and that they can drive their own change. And so what do? We do a process to change that mindset. To make sure that for the first time, for example, we ask the community and say, imagine wherever the food comes from, the free distribution, the aid, the food that you receive comes from. Imagine for the first time, where do you think that food comes from? Do you think it comes from people, or it is just shipped and dropped here in Africa and it comes from nobody, or God just drops the food in your village? And they say, no. We are actually told, and we believe it, that there are people somewhere who overproduce and they send the food to us. Then we say, when they mention the people, then we say, okay, now that you have mentioned their people on the other side, why don't we call those people superhuman beings? Because they're able to produce more than what they require. So they say, okay, let's call them superhuman beings. So we take a paper, a flip chart, we put it on the tree. And then we say, let's try to imagine and describe how this superhuman being looks like. And so you take everything the community say. Now, this process I'm explaining to you now looks very basic here in Sweden, because we may take it for granted to say, oh, okay, it looks basic. But in a community where people have resigned from active process, where people think that things cannot change, this process is very important because it changes and engages the mind for the first time. And so when they have described the superhuman being, you take that paper, put it down, and then in that process bring another paper and put it back there. And now try to tell them, can we describe ourselves? And then they start describing. Then you take the superhuman being paper, put it next to the other one. You actually literally see people opening their eyes, literally seeing people say, no, did we describe it wrongly? It appears everything is the same except the skin color. So that skin color issue has to be addressed. Otherwise, it will become a stumbling block of change. And how do we address it? For example, we say, okay, let's take a laser blade and cut that skin color, a few inches behind that difference of the color. What is going to come out if we cut it? Oh, blood. Okay, so what do you think will be the color of the blood that will come out on the superhuman being and the color of blood that will come out of you? Blood should be red for everybody. Then we say, yes, behind, few inches behind the skin color, everything there is the same. Now, this discovery helps this person who looks desperate to realize that we have an innate potential. We have the ability to change our situation. We can drive our own change. So that's the purpose of the step number one, to engage the community, to believe in themselves. Everybody can become a leader if the leadership space is provided and if that leadership innate potential is unleashed. And in every society, whether in a poor society or in a well-to-do society or in a Western society, in every society, every person can become a leader and drive their own change process, even in any institution. And so we have to believe in the people, that they can drive change. That's why the Hunger Project strategy is a people-centered strategy. After that belief, after that change of mindset, then there comes creation of good leadership. And I want to show you a slide of a slide. This is a slide I'm so passionate with because I identify myself with this slide. In one community we are working in, I went into that community in July. This is the woman I found in a clinic. And she told me her story. And she said to me, Rowlands, the first 4 children I've given birth to, I had to walk that long distance. Now, 17 kilometers here in Sweden could be something you can jump into a taxi. But you are talking of a situation where you have to walk on foot because of no access to transport. This is one of the results of a good leadership that was created. When we empowered the community, after change of mindset, the community created leadership structures, animators, volunteers, and epicenter committees, whom we empower with leadership skills. And then in this community, we had trained that leadership structure, and we made them aware that you are a change agent in yourself. You are a right holder. You have a right which you can demand from your government for the fulfillment of that right. And the government, your government, is a duty bearer. It has an obligation to meet the rights and satisfy the rights of its citizens. But until that time, the community felt powerless. The community felt like there's nothing we can do to change this distant situation. After that process, the community went, the leadership of the community went and met the local government officials and demanded provision of health service in the area. And they told the community, local leadership, to say, we have bricks, we have land, we have sand, and we have quarterstone. You should provide medicine and personnel. And then the issue is, well, now we need somebody to help us to build. Then the hunger project came in at that point. So we came in to provide what was missing. And so the infrastructure was created. In July, this is a woman I found in that area. And in another community, the community went to the government, the leadership went to the government to demand creation of a bridge in the area because it was swept away. That's what happens when we build, and these are the very same people that at one point in time, they seemed and looked like desperate and they cannot change their situation. But that's what happens when the innate potential of leadership is unleashed and changed in a community. The third stage, after the leadership has been created, we call it creation vision. You go into a community sometimes, you ask the community, what do you see 2 years from now? Or what do you want to become? And somebody says, no, I don't know. And yet this person is wishing to live for the next 2 years. So you're wishing to live for the next 2 years, and all that you see is a vacuum, is an empty space. You don't see anything. You don't see any future. You have no vision. You have no purpose to exist. So what we do in such a community is to create a vision at 3 levels. We ask the community to start engaging in a process of creating what they want to become as an individual, what they want to become as a family, and what they want to become as a community in the next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and 5 years. And then after the community vision has been created after 5 years, we actually ask them to say, document it so that it becomes clear. I have an example of a woman here who was involved in the VCA workshop in 2001. And this thing is actually a house that she lived in on the left-hand side. Doesn't look like a house, but that's a house she lived in. In the VCA process in 2001, she visualized a possibility, a future, that she would have a house, 2 bedrooms, with iron sheets, with bricks, built with bricks, a much stronger house, a much spacious house. After that was created, then the issue was, but you are still here. How do you move from this point to this point? That's how this woman actually started getting credit from the Hunger Project program, so that she could now start the journey of moving. But what I wanted to show here is that it's possible to condemn this woman and say this woman cannot change. But within 3 years, this is the change that the woman brought, just because she was able to visualize a change, to create a vision for her own future. So that's the 4th stage, which is called commitment. People have to be committed. to their vision. After you have created it, otherwise if you are not committed to the vision that you have created, that commitment will still remain a dream. It cannot be realized. And then as a fifth point is what we call action. Every community should be able to take action together as a community, as individuals, as well as a family. Because, and this is an example we always use when we are discussing with a community. We say, you know what? You can have a brilliant, wonderful vision in your mind. But if no appropriate action is taken to realize that vision, you know what will be happening? When we bury you at the graveyard, we'll actually be burying two things. We'll be burying not only a corpse, a dead body, but we'll be burying a wonderful vision, which is a wonderful wealth that we have lost and buried without being realized. And so this process, this result is what comes out when you have empowered a community. But all that comes in because we empower the community to see what they can and not always what they cannot do. In every environment we find ourselves in the hungry environment, the hungry people can either choose to look at the situation as what can't we do or what can we do. So the process itself changes and empowers the local people to be able to look at what they can do and not always at what they cannot do. And the leadership that is created at community level, that leadership is very important because that's what drives the change process. And that is important because it shows the belief and the confidence we have in the poor and the hungry people. So it is possible to change any situation. But what is much more sustainable and long-lasting way of changing it is by believing in the poor people themselves, that they can drive the change process and empowering them to be leaders of their own change process. So that's, in brief, what we are doing, the approach which we call the vision, commitment, and action approach in the community development work that we are doing in the Hunger Project Malawi. Thank you.